My name is Tyler Myros, developer advocate here at SailPoint, and I have with my colleague here with me today, developer relations lead engineer Phil Ellis. So something we've heard in the community for a while now is you'd like to be able to develop your own custom user interfaces. So we're both very excited today to share with you a new tool that we've made, the UI Development Kit. So the UI Development Kit, it's a combination of frameworks that pretty much allow you to start building your own custom user interfaces for the Identity Security Cloud quickly. So let's get right into it. I'm going to pull up my screen here. And so we're on developer.sailpoint.com. And the documentation for this is under Identity Security Cloud, Tools, and you'll see a new one there today, the UI Development Kit. So it'll give a basic overview of what it is, requirements of what it takes. For this, it's just Node and TypeScript is pretty much all you need. And let's go ahead and clone the project, get it running on our machine, and I'll kind of go through the project structure. And then I'm going to hand it over to Phil, who will then build an example UI for a good use case. So I actually already have the project down on my machine. So this is it here. So the first thing you'll want to do when you're installing this on your machine is an npm install. That'll get all the dependencies that it needs to run. So let's run that. All right, so those are added. And then next thing we want to do is we can start it up right away. npm run dev. So you could kind of see it there. But basically what it's doing is it's kind of packaging up all of our code that we've written and creating a Electron app. So this is ultimately building an Electron app and serving that up as an application. So I'm going to pull over what it built here. Let's see if that gets low. There we go. Okay, and so this is what we've made for authentication, just getting started, but you got your tenant name, domain, API URL, and tenant URL. So if I click login here, it's going to use OAuth. It's going to take me right to my login page for devrel.identitynow.com. So I can enter in my username and password here, hit sign in. I believe it's going to ask me for a code. Let's see, that is perfect. And there we go. So this is just kind of like a landing page that you can customize, again, however you want. The possibilities are limitless here. So we have a navigation bar here for some examples. You get the home, example pages, some example forms. If I click on example pages, we have a couple here. But before I get into that, I want to go back into code to show you kind of where this is at and how this works. So if we go to source, lib, sidebar, navigation.ts. So if I make that a little bit more visible here, we'll see our navigation items. And so we got the home page, example pages, example form, and then the form integration. So you'll see each one has a URL, a name, a description of what that page does. And then some of them you can specify icons in this nav bar. And all an icon is just an SVG. So you can download an SVG, import it here, save that, and import it here in the project, then get your icon right away. So that's the navigation. If I go back to the app here, let's go into this missing cloud lifecycle states. So this is a page that you would create if you wanted to make a custom page. And just as an example, it's kind of like a list. You got some fields here, but let's look at how that actually works in the back end. So we have backend source, routes, home, example pages, and then this one that I was just viewing is missing cloud lifecycle state. So for each one, it'll have a page.svelte and a page.server.ts. The server is the backend code, so you'll go get your data here, I'll make your API calls that you need for your front end. And then the page.svelte, I'll close my terminal here so you can see that a little better, is the actual like HTML UI where you'll take your data and present it to the users. So yeah, that's basically a getting started, a quick getting started, but I'm going to hand it over to Phil, our lead engineer, and he's going to actually build something with this. So Phil, you want to take it away?
Yeah. All right, thank you, Tyler.
Yeah.
So I'm here. I'm going to kind of pick this up where Tyler left off. And if you can see my screen, you can kind of see I've got the development environment open. I also have the app already running on my screen. And I was thinking that today we would build something that is somewhat useful. So right now we have this example form on here that allows you to update a source. So I have a list of sources here, and I may pick one that I know is going to work, like this one right here, and I can change the description, which is not super useful, but it works. Oh, yeah, it works. So you can change the description of a source, but the idea of this is to give you something to start with. So this is how you can implement your own custom form. There's probably a whole bunch of different things that you might like to do using the APIs in Identity Now. Some of you may be used to just writing scripts, but this allows you to build an actual UI so that if it's some repetitive task that you may be more comfortable doing in a UI, you can actually have feedback and things like that. This allows you to do that. So we start with this form, and today I'm going to build an actual transform editor. So instead of updating a source description, let's update a transform, because it'd be really nice to be able to just paste a transform into a box and then click a button and it uploads it and it's there in Identity Now. So it kind of would kind of make it a little bit easier than using Postman to update transforms, because right now that's the only way to do it. And so I thought, let's do that in this. And so we're going to take this example form, and I'm going to show you how you can use this as the foundation to extend it to do more. And I'm going to start by going into our code here. And as I said, we have the app open right here. If I go into our source folder, and then our routes and our home route, and here's our example form page. And just as Tyler mentioned, you've got your page.svelte and your page.server.ts. I'm just going to copy this entire thing. Let's copy and paste. And now I've got a copy of that form. We should probably name it something different than that. So let's do that real quick. This may or may not work. I may have to restart the app because sometimes the router doesn't like that. But let's see. So we'll call this transform editor. And we'll see. Yeah, it's, as I mentioned, it's not going to like that. So I'm just going to kill this real quick. Well, even killing it didn't work. So while that's doing its renaming, it's probably going to fail, but we'll just allow it to finish up there. The next thing we're going to do, so we know we want to name this transform editor. And so the next thing we're going to do is go up to our lib. And again, Tyler kind of mentioned this, but in the sidebar under navigation, there's this, I already had it open even. There's this page that kind of routes everything around. And one thing with Svelte is its navigation is all based on folder structure. So again, if I look in routes, you've got home / example form / example form copy, example pages, etc. Those are your actual routes. And yeah, great. So that didn't work, but let me just try. Sometimes I think if I do it in File Explorer, it works better. So I'm going to just try that real quick. I'm just navigating to that exact directory. Give me 1 second here. And going into the source, routes. You don't see me moving here because I'm just doing it on the other screen, but I'll have it in a second here. I may have to just close Visual Studio altogether, but hopefully not. Transform-editor. Yeah. All right, so I'm just going to close this out and try again. Now it worked. Okay. Back in again. That's fine. Not a problem at all. Oh, whoops. We're going to open up PowerShell real quick. And I'll go ahead and just open it back up again. And we'll be right back off and running. And now that that rename is done, I don't think we'll run into any other issues here. So just going to start it up just like before. And we'll allow that to start up. So I was back in our navigation though. So we're back where we were. And now we have our transform editor page, which is actually exactly the same as the example form page because I just copied it. But what we're going to do next is, that's starting up, but no big deal. I'm actually just going to copy that example form route and add a new route here. And we're going to call this transform-editor. That's the URL that it goes to. And then, of course, we'll also call it transform editor. And we'll say a form for editing transforms. And we'll save that. I need to log into the app here. I'm going to do that real quick. I'll bring that over here. And get my password entered in here. And it's going to ask me to type in my code too. So let's see if this works. There's my transform editor. And obviously it's just doing the same thing the last one did with updating a source. But we have the new form created. So I've at least been able to show that so far. Again, pretty simple. You just copied it and pasted it in. Don't make the mistake I made and make sure your server isn't running when you try and do that. Those large changes like renaming. But yeah, it works. So we have our new form. And so now I'm just going to start editing that form to work with transforms instead of sources. So here's my transform editor. Here's my page. First thing I want to note here is in this page how it's actually working. So when this page is first loaded, I'm going to get rid of these console logs too, probably not necessary. We can add them in later if we need to. When the page is first loaded though, it calls this get sources, which is going to fetch the get sources API right here. And this is, if you look at the path of this, it's example form/API. Well, that's actually going to take us up here. So we don't want to do that. We actually want to be going into the transform editor, because that's the page that we're in, and then in this API right here. So that's our first change we're going to make. And if I look in this server, you can see what it does. It's getting the configuration and then calling the sources API. Well, now we actually want to call the transforms API instead. And again, this is where you start seeing the value of this, because we already have the SDK in here. So it's pretty easy to just change this from sources API to transforms API. There it is. I can just tab that, and now I've got the transforms API imported. And instead of API.listSources, we're going to do API.listTransforms. And so now this API call, instead of getting sources, is going to get transforms. I imagine some things are not going to work once I do that. But let's look at the state of this now. And actually, yeah, so some of it actually did work. We already have the transforms coming in here. If I select them, though, yeah, then nothing's showing up in the description. So there's some things to change for sure. So let's go ahead and look at doing that. But our server TS, it's already done. And you can also kind of see how this could be extended to do a lot of different things. If you know, any API that's available, you literally just bring that API in here and you change how it works, and then you're going to start getting that data back to this form. So that's the initial server.ts. And then we go over to our page here, the page.svelte. Okay, so this is going to get, this is the actual get sources call. Let's call this get transforms. Makes more sense to do that. And again, going to create a few errors with that, but no problem. We can fix them pretty easily. Let's see if there are any other issues. Yep, right here. That was also calling get sources, so we fixed that. And it's going to get sources. It's going to say response.json, and I'm going to do something really quick here because this just makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and search for sources and replace anything that says sources to transforms. Looks like there's only one other place there, but then I'm going to do it with lowercase sources, lowercase transforms, so that update all of those guys. And then source transform, there's 13 of those, so that's going to be, yep, that's going to make some changes for sure. Looks like some issues there too as well. That's okay, we'll fix those in a little bit. And then I think, did I do that one? Okay, there's no lowercase sources transform. Okay, I think we're set there. Must have changed most everything. Yeah, this is because the form is not going to send back transforms. We'll get to that in a little bit. Maybe I'll change this back to sources, or to source, so that we're not dealing with those errors quite yet. And they're all in the same little place here, so it'll be easy enough to deal with. All right, so we get our oh, I did not spell that right. Transforms. I made that change manually, so that should take care of that. And the first thing we need to look at then is how this is getting returned. So that's a type of source, so we're going to have to fix that in a little bit. Updated source. So this line of code is actually never going to get hit initially because this is after I submit the form. So I'm going to kind of ignore that for now. Since I'm not submitting the form initially, I just want to get it working so like, can I display the transforms? So let's work on that first. This form object is always going to be undefined coming back when you first load the page. But we do get our transforms. It looks like the JSON object gets stored in this transforms field. This is tied to source, which this should actually be transform. That should take care of that one. As a matter of fact, if I go back to the server and look at what this list transforms returns, it's actually returning transforms read. So I'm going to update that because that's what's really getting returned here. Yeah, transform read. Oh, node stream? What? That's not right. I don't think that isn't right at all. So let's go back up here. Transform read. I think that's going to fix it. Yeah, import type transform read from the SailPoint API client. That looks better. So now we get our transforms from there, and that'll make sure our typing is all correct. Oh, and look at that. It's actually... description doesn't exist. I think it's really just going to be transform. All right. So we got a few things to clean up for sure here. It's going to take a little bit for me to go through all of these, but we'll get it done for sure. So let's look at our options that are showing up first. So we're binding to selected. Boy, you know what? This is going to bother me. Source. I thought I changed that, but I guess not. I must have been. Let's just change them all. Transform, source, 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 source. Yep. That's good. All right. Looks like we wanted to change all of those. I just didn't want to do them all en masse in case I mess up everything and I don't know what's going on. All right. So we're binding, it's going to say transforms, and this is the select. So this is what shows up on the dropdown, and it's binding to the selected transform. Okay. And when it changes, it's going to call this handle change method, which is right here. And then each value is going to contain the stringified value of the transform. I think that's good. I think that's what we want to do. And then the actual, what shows up inside of each one is transform.name. I think that's good. Yep, we want our names to show up there. That was working properly. And then below that, we have our input, and this is where our transform description is going to show up. This is really just going to be transform now, not transform description. And we're binding that to the updated transform, which I think this value is going to get set in this change here, right? Yeah, so updated transform gets set whenever you change that drop-down option. And here's where our issue is. Yeah, dot description. So we don't want to do that. So that should do a little bit better. We're doing this JSON parse on it too, which, well, if I look at it now, let's just look at where we're at. I select one, you see we just get object, object. So that's not what we want either. We're getting closer though. We're starting to get closer. Now as I select things, I'm starting to get transforms. But what we actually want to show here is the transform value after it's been stringified. So I could show it just like this, but I'm actually going to parse it and then stringify it again, because I'm going to want to format this a certain way. And let's see what happens now. Now I select one, and yeah, now I can get my entire transform. Of course, the way that this looks is not quite right. That's more of a CSS change now, though. So we have an input here. I think we want to change this. I'm guessing probably to something like a text area. That's better. And so that should at least make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and we have a scroll bar now. That's much nicer, looking better. I just need to make this a little bit taller now. And this uses, we have a lot of classes already filled in here, so H-96 should be good, I think. Yeah, that'll be 300 pixels high. And so now, all right, now my transforms are showing up. I can make changes to them pretty easily now. And this is starting to look like a real nice form, I guess. The only problem is if we submit this, it's not going to work. So I'm not even going to try that yet, because I know that's not going to work. I haven't made any changes there yet. But we're getting closer. We're getting closer for sure. So we've got our transform getting stored. Let's see here. This is name is updated transform, and then the name of this is just transform. Okay, so yeah, maybe would change that name, but for now I'm not going to. It's good enough for what we're trying to do. And so now we need to actually get the server to get to actually implement this properly, so that when I submit this form, the server updates that transform properly. So if you look right now, we have this submit button for that form. And when I click that button, if you look up at the top, where is it? Here's the form. Method is post. We've got some classes on here. And then this use enhance is actually not required, but I'll explain what it is. This is a SvelteKit specific thing. It allows it so that when you submit the form, it'll use JavaScript to submit the form rather than reloading the entire page. So it's just a little bit of a nicer experience for the user. And instead of reloading the whole page, it's just going to call that same action using JavaScript. And since this is an Electron map, we can kind of guarantee that JavaScript is going to be enabled. So there's no need to support browsers without JavaScript in this case. Now, if you were going to try and deploy this, on a server somewhere, you may find that feature, you may not expect to always have JavaScript, so then this feature becomes more important. But in most cases, yeah, you're going to say use enhance. So when that post happens, we come up to the server here, and you can see we've got this default action. This is the actual code that's going to run. And then, of course, you'll get the form data coming into that request as well. So request.form data, and this data holds that actual form information. So a couple things we need to do. First off, instead of updating the source, we're going to update the transform. And then we're not going to be calling update source. We'll call update transform. Easy enough. Still data and everything, but here's a big difference. If you look at this is data.get source, but we're not going to be getting the source data. We're going to be getting the transform data. So I'm going to change this to transform, and then updated transform. And that should work. The other thing we're going to do now is, instead of calling the source API, we're going to call the transforms API. So new transforms API. And then this is not going to be a source object. This is going to be a transform. What was it? No, I can't remember. I had it back here, though. Oh, you know what? I imported it right up here, transform read. Got to import it too. I won't trust Visual Studio Code to do my imports for me. All right, we're getting there. We're getting there. So transform read, transforms API, update transform. This API doesn't match. That's coming over here. Transforms API, and then API dot update transforms. And then this is the other thing that's not going to work, because this is the wrong params. I'm kind of surprised it didn't give me an error there, because it... Oh, API. Update transform, yep. Transforms API forms request. So maybe I need to save first before it throws some errors at me, but I feel like it's not going to like the fact that this is a sources update source request going into the update request transforms method, but seems to be okay with it. But we're going to change this because we know that's the right one. And yeah, and now of course this JSON patch operation is the wrong thing. As it turns out, ID is actually correct, but I'm going to change this to transform. Just got to, we're really just, renaming things, making sure it all works, and then transform is going to be, I believe that's it. Yeah. Okay. So taking a little time here. Oh, updated transform. So yeah, this is actually, we're going to want to use this one because we're not using the original transform that's in the select. We're using the updated transform that you edited in the dialog box. So I'm going to take this and put it in here instead. Interestingly enough, it doesn't like that. Why not? Oh, it's the same issue that we have here. I need to actually, now that I think about it, I really don't even need that original transform at all. So I can just get this value. And paste it in here because we don't need the original transform. The updated transform also has an ID that's exactly the same. So technically we don't even have to send that in. I think, I'm looking at this and I think everything's here to make this work. Let me just read through one more time to make sure I haven't missed anything. But it looks like if I send this request that this should actually work. So let me try it. It'd be kind of remarkable if it does. I'll just start with this first one. We'll change these to lowercase d. And yeah, it worked. Okay, so sort of worked. Not all the way, but we have lowercase d there, so that's good. The only issue we have now is that you saw when I submitted that form, what came back on my display box was object. And that's because I kind of expected this to happen. We were missing some things on the form itself. So we can fix that up real quickly, though. It's not too bad. You remember this part right here, form and form.source. Well, I think we're really going to be looking for... why doesn't it exist on action data? What am I missing here? Let's see. Response. Sources. That's what I missed. I don't want to return a source. I want to return a transform. That should get me there a little bit better. As a matter of fact, I think I actually want to send back the updated transform. Oh no, that's the failure. Okay, never mind. I don't know what I'm doing here. We want to return the actual transform if it fails. So that makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, we're going to return the actual data from the response for the transform. Yeah, perfect. That makes perfect sense. So let's go back to our page. And okay, now we've got what I was hoping we'd see here. Just transform, not equal to undefined, form.transform. Okay. So that'll create this transform object, updated transform. Okay, and here's where we need to make a little bit of changes. So this one we need to do the JSON.stringify, and we want it to match the same format that we had before. And look at. So let's see how that looks. I think we're getting closer now to having this fully working nicely. Go back in here and just change this to a couple of uppercase D's. And yeah, it works, and it comes back with that completed transform. It even sets our value in the dropdown properly, so that's fully functioning now. So now this will actually submit and change a transform. So I can take from this dropdown any transforms that I have. I can select it, and let's test the failure side of this too. So I'll come in here and I'll try changing. I know that you can't change the name of a transform, which drives me nuts, but cannot change it. Doesn't change, yeah. Request failed with status code 400. So that works too. And it brings me back with the original transform before I try to change it. So that's also working properly. But I can indeed change this one here. All right, so now let's think about how we can make this even better. We did that pretty quickly, so that's great. But I think the other thing that we could add to this is creating a brand new transform, because currently all I can do is change the transforms that are available to me, but I can't create a new one. So let's continue extending this a little bit. I don't think it's going to be that hard to do. And again, this is just showing a little bit of the value of this tool. You saw how quickly, within like less than 30 minutes, I was able to take a form that was there, change it, modify it slightly. But you could see, even if you needed to add additional fields, that's pretty simple. If I go into the page here and I look at my actual HTML, it's pretty easy. I could just copy this label down and paste it, and now I have another field. Change the name of this to, and when I submit the form, it would submit this field with that other value. Now, of course, in this case, I don't know what else it would be, but there it is. It's available to me now in the form object. When I submit the form, I'm going to have access to the data inside that field, and I can do some extra stuff. So you can see how quickly, like, if I have an API in Identity Security Cloud, and it has like maybe 6 different input fields, and I want to populate those from maybe like other API calls, it's pretty simple to see how you could extend this to do that. And so I hope that you're starting to see like, oh, okay, like this is pretty easy to do, even if I don't understand how SvelteKit works, because we've kind of put everything together for you. You don't have to understand that much to put the pieces together to make it work. But anyway, let's go backtrack a little bit there. We don't need that extra field. It's just going on a little bit of a tangent there. What we want to do next, I said, was add a brand new transform. So here's where my select box is, and then here's where I populate all of my option values. So I'm just going to create like a static one here. It looks like that's pretty much what I want. So I'm going to do that, but instead of select a transform, it's going to be create a transform. What am I doing? Okay. What? Okay. I don't know what happened there. Auto complete messed me all up. Create a transform. So we can save that. And now if I come back in here, I've got a new field. Yep, it says create a transform. That'll work. And actually, if I navigate away from this page and come back in, it starts off with that create a transform. Okay, that's nice. What else do I need to do? Probably, let's see, if I select that create a transform, then I know my ID of my transform definitely going to be null, because that won't exist. On my handle change, update transform, this is actually going to be completely empty. Let's think here. Probably want to just look at what my data is here. So let me just do that really quick. I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, update transform. And I didn't really get to show this yet, so it's a good opportunity to do that anyway. But there's my transform here. If I go back here, oh, it doesn't. It actually has that value again, so that wasn't a very good test, was it? I'm just thinking about what I should do to make sure that there's always a value for this transform, because what I really want to do is when I go in here and I go into my transform editor, that there should be like at least an empty object here. I feel like otherwise I'm going to have some issues. So this is going to say bind value selected transform. but there's always going to be at least some selected transform there. So let me try this. Let's see what this does here. So updated transform equals to okay, that hasn't quite done it. Oh, I see. The get, yeah, that's fine. Oh, here it's actually setting it to a blank object, so maybe I just need to do this right here. Ah, so that at least ensures I always have something there. That's good. All right, that'll make sure that I don't have errors when I go to submit things or if that object, because I'm thinking I'm doing all these stringify options or parse options. When I do a JSON parse on something that isn't, that's just like a blank string, it's going to throw errors, so I don't want to do that. So that'll at least ensure I've got something to work with in that box at all times. And I think the next thing I need to do is when I submit this, I just need to look at the ID. So let's go back to this page.server. And unfortunately, I'm not running in debug mode right now. Otherwise, I'd show you, you can actually set breakpoints here. I don't want to go through the whole login piece again, so I'm not going to do it, but you can set breakpoints in here and inspect variables. I'm going to try and do it without doing that. So let me just, again, just do the old-fashioned way, but data. So let's see what we actually have in that data when we submit this request. So I might like pick something like this, copy it over, and let's say I want to create this transform again. So I've got it here, and I click submit, and I should see, not in this console because this that piece of code is running on the server, but I should see something come on the other console. And of course it failed. We'd expect it to fail. But if I go over to my console log here, here's my form data, name, updated transform, value, and it has here it is, yeah, transform, and then value is just blank for that one. So what I can do now is I can look for this transform field, and if it's blank, then I can do some different things. So let's see here. So initially I was always calling update transform, but now I'm going to have to call a create transform. So let me create that function really quick. Async function create transform. We'll just kind of mimic what's above there. Okay, I'm not going to use all that code, but and I think, yeah, we're still going to want the updated transform because that's what we're going to use to create the new transform. And then for the API here, the actual API call, instead of calling update transform, we're going to call API.create transform. And this is going to require the transforms API create transforms request. So we'll do that too. And we just need to see what does this request require. We need that import, of course. Yeah, transform, and that's it. Oh, already populated it for me, and updated transform. If we look back, oh, whoops! If we look back at our log, we had updated transform value, so that was perfect. And we are parsing that value into an object, so that should work well. And then we're setting it inside here, and then we're creating the transform, and we're returning that response. So I think that this function will work properly. And then up in here, where we were always calling the update transform API, we're going to do things a little differently now. So it's kind of trying to figure out what I want to do, but transform undefined. Then we're going to call create transform. Else we'll call update transform. And I think we need to definitely fill our response object properly. And I think that'll all work. The only thing that I'm wondering what might not work is this part right here. It's not going to come back as undefined. It's going to come back, it looks like, as an empty string. I guess we'll only know if we after we test. So I guess now let's see what happens if I create a new transform. See what happens. Let's go back in here. Looks like it's ready to go, but I do kind of need a transform to test with. Oh, go back to my create transform, paste that in here. I know we don't know the ID, so I'm going to get rid of that. And test transform fill dev days 2024. And we know that everything else in here should work well. Oh, what happened? Didn't really get an error. Didn't really get a success message either. Probably just missing something simple. But is it in here though? I've got a whole bunch of other tests in here, so now I just have to find it. Oh yeah, there it is. And that's the one we just created. Okay. So it did create it. We're missing one thing. Looks like we're missing in the return. So it responds.data, it responds with the transform that it created. But back in the page, we must be missing to actually check for it. Form.transform, because it did not actually set our success message on the banner on the top. And the only way that's going to get set is if we scroll down, we can see here form.success and form.message. So let's go back here. I just got to figure out why did we not have a form.message on here? I'm wondering. Success true? Oh, that's interesting. The update transform actually updated it. We want to call create transform here. Oh yeah, I see what I did. Silly me. I called two APIs at the same time. Create transform. Let's try this again. I probably should do some sorting on here too so that we know where to find everything, but that's okay. All right, so testing again, dev days 2024. Maybe I should, guess I have to do this multiple times. Testing round 2, I can just increment it each time. Ah, that worked much better. Okay. Testing round 2, dev days, and there it all is, and there's our name. It even came back properly, so everything seems to be working correctly with that now. That's great. So, boy, we got our transform now. We can update transforms. We can create transforms. We can, of course, view all of our transforms. what else should we do? The one thing I noticed a little funny here is that when I was changing this transform, I click the submit button here, and the submit button is still visible. I'd like to clean that up real quick. That's an easy thing to do. So let's take care of that. Let's see here. Go back to my page, and there's my button. So let's get this button inside this if statement. So again, you can see here it's like if they're null, then show a progress bar, else show all this stuff. So now it should be wrapped inside that if statement. And really, even when I enter this page, yeah, I don't know if you noticed that, but when I enter the page, the submit button is now hidden. Yeah, and it doesn't show up until you can actually click it to do something, which makes a lot of sense. And if I click it here, yeah, see it disappears, and then it comes back with a failure. So that looks a little better. The other thing that I don't like is that I've got this request failed with status code 400, and it's just sitting up there, and no matter what I change in here, it's still saying that the request failed. So I don't really like that, so let me change that really quick too. And I think this is going to be an easy one. All I have to do is somehow get rid of that form object whenever something changes up here. So I'll just set it to undefined whenever a change happens. So let's see if that works. So it says 400. Yeah, and then I change my transform, and now that goes away. So that's also a nice kind of quality of life improvement. I can submit it. It still shows the error message, but as soon as if I type in there, it doesn't do anything. But as soon as I click out of it, yeah, it gets rid of that error message. So just another simple quality of life improvement that makes things a little cleaner. And again, what else could you add to this? I mean, there's so many things. You could probably, do some checking of the transform itself to see if it's valid before you even submit it. We're not going to get into all that, but there's a lot of extra things that you could do in here. You could also import like a package that does syntax highlighting inside of this field. That would be a nice thing to have. You could even add some functionality in this to test the transform. That would require a little more work, but all very doable. And again, just showing a little bit of what could be done with this development kit. It starts you off, it gets you the authentication, it gets you the SDKs where you need them, and from there, you can build whatever you want. I don't know if Tyler worked through the ways that you could deploy it to, but built inside of this, I'll just show you really quick. In the actual package.json, there's all the commands to build this for your different environments. So if you want to build an executable, you just run the npm run build win command, and after a minute of building, you'll actually have an executable that you can directly run on a Windows PC, and it'll run just like what you saw here. So there's no need to deploy this to a server to make this work, and that's one of the advantages of it, is that sometimes there's it's difficult to build an application and get it deployed to a server so that people can start getting value from it. This is something that if you have a small number of people in your organization that you want to share some useful tooling with, this allows you to do that. You can just deploy it to an executable or DMG and share that with those few people who use it, and they can immediately have access to all these cool tools that you built right at their fingertips. So anyway, I don't want to spend any more time going over this. I feel like we got a lot done today, and there's not much time left anyway. So I hope you learned a lot about at least what you can do with this, and I hope it opens your minds to what's possible using this UI kit. We are going to continue to advocate and build onto this, so you'll see more features coming with this, and hopefully more examples as well. And that's all that I have to show today. So hope you continue to enjoy your time here at Developer Days, and I'll see you in the next sessions.